Meeting for Tuesday, June 23rd, and we just came back from an executive session to discuss strategies relative to litigation. Announcements, there's a community vigil for the people of Charleston, South Carolina in Newton on Tuesday, June 30th at 6 p.m. Mayor Warren, faith leaders in the Newton community invite Brookline residents at a vigil for the people of Charleston, South Carolina on the steps outside Newton City Hall War Memorial at 1000 Commonwealth Avenue at 6 p.m. Tuesday, June 30th. So I would encourage anyone who would like to attend that.
Unfortunately, it's during one of our meetings, but.
Yeah.
Well, two things. I wanted to remind people that the farmers market is open, so Thursday, I think it's 1:30 to dusk. And also, the senior center is having the party of the century for all of those who are 99 or 100 years old. And it's on July.
Literally the party of the century.
Yes. July 15th at 2 p.m. at the senior center. And they want people to sign up to come, or even if you have if anyone's listening and they have a relative who's 99 or 100 who lives in Brookline, who might not be in shape to attend the actual event, they would like their names submitted so they can be recognized at this event. So it's actually one of our fastest growing populations in Brookline.
Interesting. Any other events, activities in the past week I'd like to report on? Okay, then I'll move into the calendar. First are the minutes of June 16th.
I have given Kate some edits on that.
And I have a minor edit.
And I've provided some edits as well.
Okay, so I'll move acceptance of the minutes as edited by each of us. All those in favor, Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye. I missed public comment. Do we have any? Okay. So moving on, we have a fair number of contracts tonight, including some big ones, but this one, question of approving and executing a contract amendment with Ann McIver for consulting services to the planning department is not one of the big ones. Well, it's an important one, but it's not one of the very big ones that are going to be before us soon. So, Ms. Steinfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Allison Steinfeld, Planning Director. It's actually a contract for a maximum amount of $2,800. I'm requesting that we extend this contract through the end of the fiscal year. Ms. McIver was hired for 8 weeks to help us catch up on minutes for the Preservation and Neighborhood Conservation District Commission. So I'm simply asking that we extend her contract to the end of the fiscal year so she can complete her work.
And you are still short-staffed, I believe.
No, actually, we are, right now, as of today, we are 1.8 planners. We hired a a terrific addition to the department, Marissa Barrett, who started on May 26th as a full-time planner. And on July 1, our part-time planner will go up to full-time. So next Wednesday, I guess, we will be at 2.0.
Excellent.
Okay.
And I am thrilled to have a full staff. It's very exciting.
Any questions, discussion? Seeing none, I'll move approval of a contract amendment with Ann McIver for consulting services to the planning department. All those in favor, Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, item C, question of approving transfers within the police department appropriation, 8,500 from electricity to 5,500 telephone, and 3,000 wireless communications. Chief O'Leary, tell us what's happening.
Yes, we're requesting this amount of transfer in order to pay off some bills that we've assumed in those two accounts. We had a deficit in those two accounts basically because some of the plans that we had in place for fiber to be installed that would replace costly T1 lines, which are the more expensive telephone lines that we run our radio system on. We weren't able to get the fiber installed in the time that we had hoped that it would be. It is installed now, especially between the town hall and the police department, so that cost should go away next year. And the second thing is, as you know, the public safety wireless network around town is no longer being maintained. That has required us to go back to our Verizon accounts in order to run the computers in the cruisers. And so that accounts for some of the deficit that we've had.
Are the wireless system going through a DSL system? And pardon my ignorance of this technology stuff, but
That's my new phone number, excuse me.
I mean, Verizon has, DSL, and they have the other one, Fios,
No,
whatever, but we don't have that other one here in Brookline. So is the police department using their DSL lines?
I don't know the answer to
No,
that
the wireless, DSL is not wireless. DSL is an older technology for wired internet.
Pardon my ignorance then.
So what was happening is we had, you may have noticed on many of the light posts, boxes, and we had a municipal Wi-Fi network which the police department was using for its cruisers. And the company that had put it in place went out of business. So that network is no longer maintained. So now the police department is using wireless in the same way we use wireless, commercial, 4G or whatever.
Yeah, it's the air cards that we place in the laptops that are in each of the cruises.
Selectman Daley.
Yeah, I thought the whole problem, though, was that there wasn't very good wireless service over in South Brookline. And, that was the reason we were encouraging this company to put in the distributed antenna system. So is there better coverage over there now?
There has been some, I guess, antennas installed in different locations outside of town, in particular one on Allendale Farm, one up at Boston College, the other one up at that development that they're doing up around Wegmans there, but not that, but one of the other developments that are up there. So they have improved it somewhat. It's not as good as when we had our own wireless system throughout town, because in that way some of the computers wouldn't drop and shut off, which they go back to doing now. It's better than it was, but it's not as good as it was either.
Well, I also wanted to ask you, Chief, about as you're changing various technologies, I assume that you are, or somebody on your behalf, is carefully reviewing all of this for security of your data?
Yes. That's always been a concern of ours. We are, each time we put something in, we do try to get the best security as we can. I know that I've talked to Kevin Stokes about it a lot. I've talked to Scott Wilder, who's our IT guy, and that is a concern of ours, that we want to make sure that our network is not tapped into.
All right, okay.
Okay, any other discussion, questions? Therefore, I'll move approval of the following transfers within the police department appropriation from electricity, the electricity account, $8,500, to the telephone account, $5,500, and wireless communication, $3,000. All those in favor? Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you, Chief. So now we're moving on to the first of the large contracts. So this is a question of awarding and executing a contract in the amount of $2.61 million with Contractors Network, Inc., in conjunction with the Municipal Service Center renovations project. Mr. Masick, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chairman, we received 5 bids for the Municipal Service Center. contract. This contract is basically to repair the floor that we've been having problems with over the last 17 years since it opened. And so we'll be addressing the floor problem. And by doing that, we'll be moving around the different work bays within the, and then moving a wash bay out back in the parking area. So 5 bids were received. The architect reviewed the bids and found that Contractors Network was the lowest and responsible bidder.
So I note that it actually came in below our estimates,
Which is a good thing.
which is a good thing. But I also note that it's, you know, a good percentage below the next highest bid. So does that cause us any concerns? Have we dealt with these folks before?
They did a small $1 million contract for the Pierce Auditorium. And in speaking with Tony Quigley, my counterpart, he said make sure they have a strong super. And we asked for the resume of their super, and we believe we have a strong super.
Okay. Selectman Daley.
Yeah, I just have a question, because I believe that we've repaired this floor once or twice before. And I'm hoping this is the final time we're going to repair this floor.
I'm speaking on behalf of the Building Commission as well. We all hope this is the last time I come before you on this issue.
But do they have, do the experts on the Building Commission have some confidence that we finally are at the right solution?
I think we are at the right solution. There's been a lot of studies. The last structural engineer incorporated what they saw for all the studies that occurred over the last 15 years, and we believe we have the right solution now.
I think the difference is in this application, we're fixing it, but we're also relocating the load, which was creating, continual damage. So
Yes.
we're actually reallocating the way that the floor is being used by moving heavy equipment to the area that's a slab as opposed to a structural floor.
That is correct. That's the whole gist of the project.
And it looks like we're getting both the bid itself plus both of the alternates in this contract?
Yeah, that's the advantage of the bids coming in a little low,
Yeah.
which is unusual in this bidding environment.
To answer that question, we also had at the Heath School very low bid. Nauset was exceptionally low as well.
And it worked out?
Then it worked out.
Okay.
You just have to have a lot more vigilance.
Right, okay. And you're prepared to be vigilant, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, seeing no more questions or discussion, I will move award and execution of contract in the amount of $2,610,000 with Contractors Network, Inc. in connection with the Municipal Service Center renovations project. All those in favor, Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. So now we're getting to the largest contract of the evening, and this is the question of awarding and executing a construction manager contract in the amount of $10,548,719 with Shawmut Design and Construction of Boston in connection with the Edward Devotion School renovations and additions project.
I'd like Tony to just explain to everyone what is a construction manager at risk, and because this is, I think, a new concept for us. And
Right, thank you. I was going to ask that, too. I'm glad you did that.
Yes, the construction, thank you, Tony Quigley, Building Department. The construction manager at risk is basically another name for a general contractor, but it's used in the context of where we bring in the contractor early on, long before the completion of bid documents, to engage them in the design process to help us with scheduling, constructability, phasing, helping make sure that we have a good set of bid documents for the trade and non-trade subcontractors. It advises on issues of cost control and all sorts of things that relate to, that can impact construction. And the idea here is to, again, to hopefully avoid some of the issues that come in construction that you're all familiar with, such as delays and change orders. It doesn't mean we won't have those issues, but the idea is to try to mitigate them and manage them and eliminate as many of them as possible. And the construction manager at risk process is particularly well suited to complicated and complex projects like the devotion, where we're dealing with maintaining an existing historic building while removing additions that were put on in the 50s and the 70s, and underpinning that historic building during construction, building the new phases, maintaining phase construction with students, half of the student population on site. So it's particularly lends itself to those type of projects. And just for your information, with us tonight we have Mr. Kevin Sullivan, if he can raise his hand, from Shawmut Design and Construction, in case you have any questions for him. And also to his immediate left is Mr. Pip Lewis. You're going to be considering potentially a change to their contract. So those two gentlemen and their teams, if acted upon favorably tonight, are really, in the town side, is your team for building the devotion school, which will be an excellent project when done. So we have a long way to go, but the idea here is we need to be in construction a year from now. And
So how about the at-risk piece? What does that mean?
It's just the at-risk piece is more a title than anything else. The risk always remains with the awarding authority, whether or not it's conceem at risk or low bid. The idea here for us is to minimize the exposure to the town on issues that may come back in the form of change orders or delays.
So it's my understanding that this would have to be, there'd have to be an application filled out with the Inspector General to allow us to proceed with this. Is there any risk that that application may be turned down? Is that more of a perfunctory process, or you've done it? Okay.
That's already been secured.
I will say that our former colleague, Betsy DeWitt, was on the committee to select the construction manager at risk. And I know that all of them did, this was a little bit prior to my involvement, but felt that Shawmut was very good, and I think they then worked with them on the price to bring that down. And so that was the, I believe, unanimous recommendation of that group?
Yes, it was, the selection process is two-phase. It's based on qualifications first, and then the price is considered. And, Shawmut comes with an excellent reputation in the local area and beyond. And the committee was unanimous in ranking Shawmut first. And then Shawmut did work with us on the areas of the cost proposal that we're allowed to discuss with them by statute. And the general conditions, however, it should be noted, are just an estimate at this point. We won't really know what the cost of the project is until the guaranteed maximum price approximately a year from now. But I know that the architect and the contractor, Shawmut, if approved both tonight, are very committed to delivering us an excellent project within the project budget and on time. This is a very high-profile project, and all of us need to do that. So that's what we're going to do if you approve that.
So what we're voting on tonight is the construction management piece, and the amount of money, the 10.5 million, that's construction management, and the price of the project hasn't yet been completely determine, and it'll be a while before we get that guaranteed maximum price.
That's right, because we have to finish the design, we need to bid the file sub-bids like we normally do on every project, and at that point, then we will have a better idea of what the costs are, but there will be interim cost estimates all along, and I expect that we'll be doing value engineering from now until we have that guaranteed maximum price, and probably beyond that. We're going to keep a very close eye on cost and quality and schedule, like we always do.
Yes, there's a, when you choose a construction manager at risk, that this, as you say, is not for the whole project. Often, though, this would be the company that would get the job to build the whole project, but it would be another round of bids, and so that's not necessarily the case.
Selectman Heller.
As you know, we both participated in the high school project, and at that time we had, although it was many years ago, we had a construction manager in Gilbane. And I'm curious as to how you see the differences between how that project went forward and the current situation.
Well, the difference is that, if you recall, Gilbane was a construction manager, but they didn't actually contract for the construction work. That was another company that was bid under the traditional design bid build chapter 149. So Gilbane, in that instance, they did an excellent job, and they were one of the firms here, and was acknowledged that they would do a fine job here too. Had a different role there, and in this instance, should you approve the contract tonight, and should we achieve a satisfactory guaranteed maximum price in the future with Shawmut, they'll actually be the general contractor. They will be contracting with all of the subcontractors and actually building the project for us. So that's the primary difference.
Selectman Franco.
So I know that Shawmut has a great reputation locally and regionally. I'm wondering if you can highlight some of the projects they may have worked on previously in Brookline.
I don't know that they've worked on any in Brookline, but at this, if you don't mind, I'll ask Mr. Sullivan to come up and speak to that, if he would. Mr. Sullivan?
Good evening. Kevin Sullivan, Vice President of Shawmut. So in particular for Shawmut, our work experience in Brookline, we don't have much. We've done some retail, some bank stores, but from the standpoint of Shawmut and our reputation, and certainly most of our work in Eastern Mass, in the Boston, Cambridge area, is educational, both higher ed, private sector, the public sector, K through 12. So we have quite a bit, roughly on the order of magnitude for fiscal year 2015. We're tracking in the educational sector about $350 million, and that's pretty consistent for the past 3 to 4 years, in that range.
Any other questions? I'll ask a question. This is probably more for Mr. Quigley. We still haven't come to a solution or decision yet on the how to handle the children on site versus off site?
Well, right now, and since the project's inception, we've planned to do phased construction with roughly half the student population on site. And should we continue on that course, I'm very confident that we can do that safely and very well. We've done it in the past on many other projects, and it works out very well. We know how to implement that, and we know how to do that. Shawmut has a lot of experience with that too, a lot of experience. We are continuing to explore other avenues of potentially moving all of the students to different locations. I'm really not at liberty to discuss any of them with you folks right now, because a lot of it's being handled by the school department. And
That's still in
But it's
process?
still in the process, and it's
Okay.
desirable if we can make it work,
Right, okay.
for all kinds of reasons.
Yep. Selectman Franco?
Final question, I promise. I know that Mr. Sullivan, you said you do about $350 million a year in K-12. I'm wondering if you've got any experience with construction management at risk, where this is your first time on this merry-go-round.
No, we do. So, so I'd say for Shawmut, the majority, I'll say 85% of our contracts are CM at risk.
Okay. So I see no other questions or comments. I will therefore move award and execution of a construction manager contract in the amount of $10,548,719 with Shawmut Design and Construction of Boston in connection with the Edward Devotion School renovations and additions project. All those in favor, Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. So moving on to the next big contract, same project, now the architect. So this is the question of approving contract amendment number 6 in the amount of $8.127017 million with HMFH Architects in connection with the Edward Devotion School renovations and additions project. Mr. Quigley, again.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. HMFH Architects has, as you all know, been our architect through feasibility and schematics design. We're now at the point where we need to commence design development immediately, now that the project has been approved by the voters of Brookline and the MSBA. And HMFH, I think, has done an excellent job to date. And this is for, as I said, design development, construction documents, bidding, construction administration, and project closeout. So this is basically an amendment to bring us through the completion of the project. And if approved, the total project value to date would be $9,471,117.
Any questions? Wow, that's such a big, no questions.
Well, I will just add that the Devotion Committee, which is, I only recently joined, but has been working with HMFH on various concepts, and lots of architects on that committee, lots of suggestions, so it takes a little patience to deal with our committees in Brookline, but
Right, and HMFH is handling it.
yes.
Okay. So,
They did Town Hall, as, you know, our renovations here in Town Hall, as you may remember.
right, and I'm familiar with the fact they did a high school study back in the, back in the B-Space days, they did a study for us.
And I think they've done another school project in Brookline, haven't they? No?
I don't believe so. I think it was Town Hall was the...
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
getting the nod. Town Hall was the project, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so being that we have experience with this firm, I think that cuts down on the questions too. So I'll move acceptance and approval of contract amendment number 6 in the amount of $8,127,017 with HMFH Architects in connection with the Edward Devotion School renovation and additions project. All those in favor, Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye. Thank you. So moving on, a smaller, well, much smaller, question of approving change order number 5 in the amount of $21,138.17 for work to be performed by Lambrian Construction Corp. In connection with the Old Lincoln School renovations project. Mr. Quigley again.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I can run through all the items quickly if you wish, or
No.
okay. So
You
this
can
is,
summarize it.
all right. So this is, if approved tonight, again, it's $21,138.17. It involves additional roofing work, plumbing, carpentry work, and credits and additions for utility usage. There's credits because we finally
Right,
got...
so there's some expenses, some credits, and it
That's
nets
right.
out to $21,138.
That's right.
And you're satisfied that you've examined it, you've examined the changes, and they seem okay to you?
That's right, and they're all recommended by the architect and were discussed and approved by the building commission and school committee.
Selectman Daley?
Yeah, I mean, I believe I recall hearing that the millwork in the science room was something that the contractor pulled out when they weren't supposed to, what had been existing there?
That's right.
So, but I see we're still paying $11,000 for the new
Yes,
stuff.
we got some credit, it wasn't much, but the problem is that it sort of snowballed because then the sinks had to go back in and the vent piping wasn't up to code, but I mean, it is, we're gonna get all new cabinetry and sinks and plumbing in those rooms, and a good portion of this was a school request for a sink and cabinet in the adjacent teachers area, which was not in the scope of work originally, so that was about a third of it.
Selectman Franco?
I'm wondering where we are with the appropriation. Are we sort of on budget? Are we running up against the total appropriation for this? How are we doing on dollars?
We're doing okay. We're reaching the end of the project, which is good. This has been a particularly difficult project, even though it's small, because it's very piecemeal. And as a result, you run into a lot of little problems. Every time you open a wall, a lot of other projects, we just tear everything out, goodbye, you start over again. This, we're connecting into existing plumbing and existing walls and roofing. It's just on and on. But I think that, this will be another project where we're not going to exceed the budget.
And this is a building that obviously I think is going to be used for the foreseeable future, if not only just for the devotion school, but for other school renovations that may proceed in the future. I'm wondering if the expenses we're incurring now are going to pay dividends down the road, if we can expect unforeseen circumstances to arise the next time we open up the walls.
You may, but what I can tell you is that you're getting a lot of value here. You're getting an all-new roof. Your cupola is now, there's a change order here and for the cupola, but when you look at that cupola, it's sound. It's going to be sound for years to come. You've got a new boiler in the building. You've got brand-new accessible bathrooms with, and I think there's new lighting, there's new, so there'll always be, when you do a piecemeal project, we can't address everything. However, I'm quite certain that when you folks go in there and see the building, you're going to be very pleased with what you see. And I'm also quite certain that the students and the parents and the teachers who go there will be very happy too.
So what I hear you saying is there's some unexpected expenses that came up and maybe increased the cost, but we also just sort of timed this when we needed to replace the boiler and do some of the more nuts and bolts updates to the building.
That's right. A lot of the money went into infrastructure, and we didn't replace both boilers, but we replaced one of them, and the other one's still in good shape. And I think the building's going to be sound. We spent money waterproofing the deck from the garages below. It's a good thing we did, because if that had gone much further, we would have had structural issues to deal with.
Selectman Daley?
Yeah, I recall when we were in that building, when that was serving as our town hall for a while, that down on that basement level where there's a gymnasium, there was a lot of dampness and mold issues, and I know some of that was addressed when the subsequent school group went in there, but Is that, how is that situation
We're
now?
putting in a ventilation system for the basement areas, and that's a large part of this project. It's ductwork and an air handling unit down in the old girl showers unit, and then there's a cooling tower outside of the building to help remove humidity in that basement area. So I think, I think we had to be creative here, but I think the money is pretty well spent, and I'm quite confident.
I think that's very important, because so many kids have serious allergies these days that you can't be in an area which is all moldy, and I think that's worth whatever we spend on it.
Okay, so seeing no other questions or comments, I will move approval of change order number 5 in the amount of $21,138.17 for work to be performed by Lambrian Construction in connection with the Old Lincoln School renovations project. All those in favor? Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Right. Okay. Yeah. So we have 3 change orders. The next item for Lawrence School project. Mr. Quigley again. You're a popular guy.
Yes, well, we're trying to get a lot of work done. Change order number 4 is a net increase of $1,220.35. It involves some structural work, electrical work, and deletion of window treatments that were not necessary. And again, the net is $1,220.35. Change order number 5 is for $36,829.58. It's for gravity flow sewer from the building out to the street. And the final change order number 6 is a no-cost 30-day time extension owing to the severity of the past winter.
I'll note that it looks like there's a piece of change order number 4 missing from the calendar, and that's the revised stair railing for 900.
Oh, yes, that's right, yep.
So that
Sorry,
we'll
just
include
noticed
that
on
in
the calendar.
in our vote. Questions, Selectman Daley?
Yeah, there's the gravity flow pipe to a new manhole. I seem to remember that Lawrence School had some serious flooding in the basement when there was flooding in that whole area. Now, hopefully with the Muddy River project, that won't be an issue, but I'm wondering if this drain pipe that you discovered was in any way related to this flooding they experienced, and if this situation will be totally resolved in the
No, this
future.
is a new sanitary pipe from the building out to the sanitary line in the street. So this would have no impact on any flooding issues, but as far as I know, flooding hasn't been an issue there recently. It has?
It's, I mean, I've been on the sport a long time now, so it was
Recently?
a few years ago.
Oh, yeah, I'm not aware of anything recently, but in either case, this wouldn't have any bearing on that.
Okay.
I'll therefore move acceptance of change orders to be performed by GVW in connection with the Lawrence School Classroom Edition. Change order number 4 totaling $1,220.35 for $830.45 for bracing curtain wall, $436.42 to disconnects for roof top supplies and return fans, $923.48 for revised stair number 2 railing, and a credit of $970 to delete the window treatments. Change order number 5, $36,829.58 for gravity flow sewer manhole, and change order number 6, no cost 30-day time extension. All those in favor? Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And chair votes aye.
Thank you very much.
And the question, item I, question of honoring deceased veteran William J. Kickham with a flag-raising ceremony on June 30th, 2015. I don't see anyone here to speak to it, but I don't think we
Well, we
need
should
it.
say this has
Yeah.
been after a warrant article before a town
Right.
meeting by Neil Gordon. This has become the practice to raise the flag in honor of some deceased veterans. And
Well,
this is, I think, the third one.
Right, and I was at the one recently for Dr. Liederman, which was very moving. And I'll note that the memo says Monday, June 29th, so I'll have that I'll have that in our vote. So any other discussion?
I'm just wondering if Mr. Kickham is in any way related to the Kickham apartment buildings on Harvard Street.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
It was a prominent family in town. I don't know, don't know specifically what the Housing Authority building was, which one was named after.
well, I will take that on as an action item to ask Mr. McGroarty about that.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I'll
report
note
back to the
that
board.
Mr. Kickham was a World War II veteran who suffered grievous shrapnel wounds during the Battle of the Bulge, which he received the Purple Heart. He returned to Brooklyn and became a federal agent and continued to serve his country. So I'll move acceptance of that we honor deceased veteran William J. Kickham with a flag-raising ceremony on June 29th. All those in favor? Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And the last item on our miscellaneous calendar, a new addition, question of authorizing the chairman of the board to execute an amendment to the town's agreement with the Mass Historical Commission to accept an additional $20,000 grant to improve the Fisher Hill Gatehouse. Far be it from us to turn money down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very pleased to advise that the Mass Historical Commission has just awarded the town an additional $20,000 to effect improvements to the Fisher Hill Gatehouse. This supplements an existing $40,000 grant that we are currently administering. So I'm therefore requesting that you authorize the chairman to execute an amendment to our agreement with the state.
What will we be using this money for?
I don't know. We actually got the grant so quickly, we haven't even had a chance to give it any thought. We haven't seen anything in writing yet. But the gatehouse certainly warrants a significant amount of improvements. I was in it a few weeks ago, and there are a lot of exciting opportunities, and we will spend the $20,000 very well.
Okay.
Channeling our former chair, now town meeting member Goldstein, where are we in narrowing down those possibilities for future use of the gatehouse? Do we have any idea what we may use it for going forward?
No, I don't think we have addressed that as yet. There's a great deal of work that has to be done within the gatehouse, but again, it has a tremendous amount of potential. I quite honestly would love to see my daughter married there, but
Maybe
that
it
was
could
the
be
first thought that came to me.
Is she even engaged?
No, she isn't. As I indicated, there's a lot of work to be done.
You're on TV, you can make an
Yes,
announcement.
unfortunately, she lives in D.C. and won't see this.
It's streamed. She might. Okay, so seeing no other questions or discussion, I'll move that we authorize the chairman of the Board of Selectmen to execute an amendment to the town's agreement with the Mass Historical Commission to accept an additional $20,000 to improve the Fisher Hill Gatehouse. All those in favor? Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay, moving along.
Thank you very much, and we'll get you more information.
Thank you. We have an Arbor Day proclamation. Mr. Brady.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Thank you for your time. I'm always glad to come here as we transition from spring into the summer season. Arbor Day, as you may know, in Massachusetts is officially the last Friday in April. We in Brookline have taken the past 3 or 4 years, frankly, to adjusting it a bit, as many other communities do, to match up with timing and schedules that work better for us. As you may or may not be aware, in some wind events earlier this year, we lost a very large 50-plus inch diameter red oak that was the signature piece in the center of what some people call Winthrop Square. Many people know it as the Rose Garden Park up in St. Paul and Still Street area. So we've been holding off a little bit. We took our time. We located a very nice 5-inch diameter red oak to start the long, slow replacement process. We've done some postings in the park. We reached out to many of the young daycare providers who have helped us in the past when we've done plantings in the parks, and we're looking forward to having a nice welcoming ceremony on Thursday at 11 o'clock to celebrate Arbor Day, plant the new tree, and have the community join us as we restart the next generation of growth for the park users.
Sounds like a fun event. So, any question? So I'll quickly read the proclamation. Whereas the Brookline Tree Planting Committee was created by a special act of the Massachusetts Legislature in 1886 to protect and preserve the town's tree resources, and whereas the town of Brookline, the Department of Public Works, and the Tree Planting Committee are committed to planting and maintenance for all town roadside shade trees, and whereas Brookline has been recognized as Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation for its care and stewardship of urban forests and desires to continue its tree planting programs, and whereas the town of Brookline has been part of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts annual Tree City USA Awards Day program since 1988, and whereas, this is the last one, the town of Brookline encourages neighborhood organizations, schools, families, and individuals to learn the importance of trees in observance of this tree planters holiday. Be it therefore resolved that the town of Brookline, through its duly vested tree planting committee, proclaims the June 25th as Arbor Day in Brookline. So all those in favor of signing this resolution, please say aye. Oh, it's proclamation. Selectman Daley.
Aye.
Selectman Franco.
Aye.
Selectman Heller.
Aye.
Selectman Green.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you for your time. If you're available, I welcome you to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Okay, moving along. We're now going to be discussing a pilot agreement with Soka Gakkai International USA, owner of the property located at 303 to 307 Boylston Street. Mr. Cirillo, please fill us in.
Good evening. Yes, and I will not attempt to pronounce that.
Yeah.
I was going to call it Sokagaki, but international. This is a pilot
You're probably
agreement between
correct.
this organization, a California-based organization, and the town of Brookline for the property located at 303 Boylston Street. It's a Buddhist religion organization that actually has been in the town for a number of years as a tenant. They were located up at the Boston University properties and now just recently have purchased the 303 Boylston property. As they're from California, there's no one here to represent them this evening, but I do want to mention a few names to thank. One of them is the attorney, the local Massachusetts attorney for this organization, David Conley, who worked long and hard back and forth between the organization and the town to make this happen. I also want to mention Kara Bruton and Gary McCabe. How do these things happen? The organization came to the planning department to discuss potential sites for construction. The planning department, economic development division, suggested that this might be an opportunity for them to consider a pilot. They thought it was interesting. She passed it on to the assessors. The assessors reviewed it. They passed it on to me, and I just hounded everybody until they all agreed. So here we are. This is an interesting pilot because we have 20 pilots now, but this is the 5th religious organization that's in our pilot list. A lot of people don't realize that we have this much of an impact on the religious subgroup. We also have a lot of colleges as well. but this is the 5th religious organization. I think at your desk this evening, there's a list of pilots, the existing pilots, and I gave a list of the out years to show that, in fact, there are growth in your pilots. And the reason for that, of course, is we phase up these pilots over a number of years. So there's a lot of growth still in those numbers. Some of these contracts that you've reached an agreement on most recently go up 25 years, and by the time the phase-up is completed, your annual amount will be well over $2 million.
Selectman Daley.
Mr. Cirillo, I stand in awe of you. You have done an amazing job, and I remember when you were first mentioning this, and I was thinking, well, who's going to pay us payments in lieu of taxes when they don't have to? And you have really done a tremendous job, and this is a credit to you, how many institutions are on this list, and it's certainly very important to our revenue, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you. You know, it is a team approach, though. I just want to keep saying that. First of all, I always rely on Gary McCabe, who I have great admiration for, and Kara Burton is so sensitive to our discussions. We bring her into these conversations all the time. I remember walking a site behind the high school one time with a prior economic development officer looking at the land, the hill behind the high school as a potential site for development. So we're constantly working with economic development and the assessing office on these issues, and it really is a team approach. And also, I want to also add the town council's office as well, because they work long and hard hours on these agreements as well. This is an interesting pilot also, because it's ongoing. Now, like all other pilots, we allow an adjustment every 5th year. We allow them what I call a renegotiation period. Of course, they could choose to opt out, but it is my experience that once they're in and they get acclimated to the annual payments, they're not particularly rushing to get out of these payments. We haven't had any organization bow out of our signed agreements. So, and I'll also say, going back to 2006, when we first started this, 2006, 2007, the annual amount was $35,000 a year. So
yeah, now we're up to we're going to be up to over $1 million in 5 years.
Or less. And, you know, there is value growth, and those numbers change because of value growth.
Right. And I'll also note that this is also a recognition of the value that institutions place in locating in Brookline, because this is a desirable community.
Yes.
Well, and then, as I frequently said, that, you know, when they call 911, we respond. And so that is, I appreciate that they recognize they're getting something from us. When we plow the roads, they're able to get to their job in the morning and so on. So it's good that they contribute.
Selectman Green?
I was just curious, other than, you know, I mean, it's a decent thing to do. What is it that you're able to use to negotiate these pilots with the typical, you know, nonprofit or taxes? I mean, I can see where BU would be concerned about their image and things like that, but for a small group like this, what is it that...
Well, it's interesting. Not discussing this particular group, I'll mention their incentive in a minute. But in general, the nonprofits feel very comfortable in the town of Brookline. They want to be a part of Brookline, and they look for ways to be a part of it. What doesn't necessarily leap to mind is them paying us money, of course. And so the negotiation then begins. And we have created this concept about phasing up to our target amount of 25%. We try to keep the term as short as possible, but we also understand that depending on the nonprofit, financial condition, we might have to adjust the term, so some organizations go immediately to 25%, and some of them are spread out over a number of years. When you spread them out over a number of years, that first year is usually at a level that it would be difficult to say no to. And so that starts, well, the camel's nose under the tent is the best way I could think about it. Once they get comfortable in doing it for the first time, then it's just slight incremental growth. The other thing we do is we add as an incentive access to our consortiums of purchasing. For instance, we offer nonprofits who are willing to join our pilot organization, our pilot agreements, to get into our oil and gasoline purchasing. And as you know, starting on July 1st, we're going to be buying number 2 oil at $2 a gallon for the next year. We also have purchasing consortiums for office supplies, reams of paper. It comes to mind not Boston University, excuse me, Beaver Country Day took advantage of this, and they bought conference room furniture for about a third the price that they would have by going out on their own. So this is an incentive out there that the nonprofits are taking note of. I met with a nonprofit yesterday, and although I'm not certain of the outcome because they really, that's a difficult financial condition that they might be in, they certainly were interested in being involved in the consortium. So that's another added incentive.
Selectman Franco and then Selectman Heller.
I want to, as I've said previously, congratulate you, not only a leader in Brookline on this topic, but a national leader. It bears repeating that you are featured prominently in the Lincoln Land Institute report, which I think kicked off the attention on the topic of payment in lieu of taxes. I want to join you in thanking and congratulating other town staff who've played a real role in this. And finally, I want to thank these 20-some-odd organizations who have made a financial commitment to the town and realized that the strength of their organization, whether it's religious, educational, medical, cultural, is only improved and strengthened by having a strong partner in Brookline and the health and vitality of this community.
Thank you.
Selectman Heller.
I'll second what Selectman Franco said, and I'll also ask you, I know that obviously they're relying on the public safety services, fire, police, et cetera, but I'm curious as to whether these nonprofits rely on us for trash collection as well, or do they contract that out separately? No,
they don't rely on us for trash collection. They rely on us for water delivery. But that's a separate bill.
Right.
Many a time I go to discuss a pilot negotiation with a nonprofit and have to bring them a bill that they had forgotten to pay. So I use that as an opportunity to collect, as well as hope that they will contribute in the future, as I did yesterday, as a matter of fact. No, not refuse collection. But the primary service delivery is police service, fire service, and road maintenance and snow removal. And those services represent approximately 25% of the tax levy. And that's why we set our target at 25%, as did Boston, by the way. Both Boston and Brookline have the same target goal.
Thank you.
Okay, so I will move acceptance, approval of the pilot agreement with Soka Gakkai International USA. We have the spelling right, even if I get the pronunciation wrong. Owner of the property located at 303 to 307 Boylston Street. All those in favor, Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you
very much.
Mr. Cirillo. Okay, so moving on to a public hearing on the petition of Teleport Communications LLC for permission to construct and a location for such line of conduits and manholes with the necessary wires and cables therein under the following public ways: Aston Road, conduit easterly and southeasterly from pole 185 to a distance of approximately 170 feet to Hammond Street, and then Hammond Street for about 80 feet to 180 Hammond Street, and a new manhole. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us?
Right.
What's going on?
Good evening. My name is David Edgar. I'm with Sienna Engineering Group, and we are consultants for Teleport Communications America, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of AT&T. Teleport is proposing to install 2 4-inch conduits along Ashton Street and across Hammond Street to the property of 870 Hammond Street. These conduits will be installed at an approximate depth of 42 inches. The trench will then be backfilled, compacted, and restored in accordance with the specifications of the town's Public Works Department. And this project is to service AT&T Mobility, who has space at the cell tower on that property.
So how much disruption will this be?
I anticipate the construction will be complete in approximately 3 to 5 days, barring any unforeseen incidents, probably 2 to 3 days to excavate the trench and install the conduits, and then another day or 2 to do the final restoration and install the inner duct in one of the 4-inch conduits.
Okay, and you don't foresee needing a noise bylaw waiver? You'll be doing it during business hours?
During business hours is our anticipated plan, yes. We'll, the contractor, once it's awarded, will get the permit from the engineering department and provide them with traffic management plans and any other requirements.
And what's your time frame, roughly?
Within the next month or 2.
Okay. Selectman Daley?
Yeah, I think this question is actually for Mr. Ditto. I thought we'd done road work out there at Hammond Street not too long ago.
We haven't done anything in Hammond Street recently. Aston Road was probably in the last 10 years we did something out there.
Okay, so I assume if that surface is relatively new, 10 years is new by our standards, I guess, but that you hold them to a high standard when they're restoring after digging.
Yes, when the road's anywhere from, let's say, 5 to 7 years new, then we hold them to a higher standard. In other words, we make sure that if the pavement's not even within the trench they're digging, that they go a little bit longer, wider to make it feather into the existing pavement.
Okay.
This is a public hearing. If anyone would care to speak on this petition, come up to the microphone, tell us who you are, and tell us your concerns.
Thank you, Selectman. My name is Stephanie Boudreau, and I live on the corner of Aston and Hammond. And I don't know exactly, I haven't seen the map, obviously. I don't know exactly what they're planning on doing. There's a pole on the corner it's right outside of our driveway, like right on our fence line, and they're there. I don't know if it's you guys. But somebody's there all the time, putting stuff up. I think it's a fake telephone pole, and
it's a fake one?
Or maybe it's a real telephone pole, but there's a lot of boxes on the pole, and they're there all the time doing work on that telephone pole, and they block my driveway, and they don't make a mess, but I'm concerned that where they're going to be digging is it going to be directly outside of my driveway, and I want to know how it will affect us and affect our ability to get in and out, how the noise will affect us. And I don't know if there's an opportunity here because there are no sidewalks outside of my house on that side. If they're doing construction, if they're digging anywhere, if there's an opportunity to get a sidewalk installed.
Gentlemen, on the impact?
Would you mind telling me which house is yours here? Is this the pole you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, we'll be coming from this pole. Due to everything on that pole, we were told we were not able to place anything on this pole.
Is this your pole?
No, it's not.
Oh.
No. We have no ownership in the poles. We lease space from Verizon and Eversource to be on these poles, so we need to be licensed with them before we can make any attachments, and we're in the process of that right now. As I stated, the construction in this area would take no more than 2 days. At all times, we would allow access in and out of the driveway. It'd be done during normal business hours unless otherwise imposed by the engineering department. Probably between the hours of 9 and 3 is fairly common.
And what are you putting in there? This pipe?
Yes, conduit to install fiber optic cable.
Are the abutters given notice when the street is dug up?
Well, they, by law, are given notice of this meeting.
Okay. Will they have advance word that you'll be in front of their house, potentially being noisy and?
Yeah, we like it when the utilities can send a notice to them saying, here's the window, we expect to be there next week or something. That way maybe then, maybe people can schedule their vacation for that week, or at least know what's coming.
No, I completely understand the concern, and I would be happy to do that, even if the board would like to put this in as a condition of the grant of location, we'd be happy to do that, and address any concerns that you have during construction.
Okay.
I'd be happy to give you my card when the contractor's out there, and if you have any problems, you feel free to call me directly.
And I guess the last question would be, is there an opportunity, since they are digging right where a sidewalk would go, this is our house, to have a sidewalk installed?
I think this question is for Mr. Ditto.
Yeah, I don't really think we're impacting that side of the road, but what I can offer is if she wants to have a sidewalk installed, we can do it under our sidewalk policy where the town will pay half the cost if the homeowner will pay the other half.
You can.
Of what the cost?
Well, I'll tell you, this is Peter Ditto, who's our town engineer, and if you call the DPW department, you can talk with him and discuss this, in more detail if you're interested.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just get notice before the work is going to be done?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, public comment? Questions from the board? Therefore, I'll move that we grant permission to construct and a location for such a line of conduits and manholes with the necessary wires and cables therein under the following public way or ways: Aston Road, conduit easterly and southeasterly from pole 185-2, a distance of 170 feet to Hammond Street, and then Hammond Street southeasterly from Aston Road, a distance of approximately 80 feet to 870 Hammond Street, and one new manhole, and I'll add a condition that the butters be notified in advance of the work. Should we say 1 week?
1 week, yeah.
1 week in advance? Okay, all those in favor, Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Moving along, curbside collection and processing of single-stream cycling contract. So this is the contract for the coming year to handle the pickup and disposal or recycling of our single-stream recycling. So Commissioner Papasturgeon, tell us what's happening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In April of this year, the department publicly advertised and accepted proposals for curbside collection and processing of single-stream recycling. It's hard to believe that it's been 5 years since we first implemented single-stream recycling.
I feel as if it's been forever.
Yeah, but nonetheless, it has. This was a 5-year contract that we had executed with Waste Management of Massachusetts, and it now comes to an end on June 30th of this year. We did ask Waste Management for a proposal for a contract extension. Generally, we're allowed to extend a contract for 2 to 3 years if conditions are favorable. We did ask them to do that. At the time, their proposal was not what I deemed to be beneficial for the town of Brookline, so I declined it, and then went out to a public bid and accepted proposals. We did receive 3 proposals, one from Waste Management, who was the current contractor, one from Casella Waste Management of Massachusetts, who happens to be our current contractor for municipal solid waste disposal, that was awarded by this board last June, and Capital Waste Services. This is one of the contracts that under Massachusetts general law, I have the authority to negotiate after it's bid. So once we accept the proposals, we then begin an intense couple of months of actually calling the contractors in and negotiating and trying to hammer the price down. We did meet with both Waste Management and Casella on at least 3, maybe even 4 occasions. We did meet with Capital Waste, who did withdraw after the first negotiating session for his own reasons. But the final results were that we felt that Casella Waste Management of Massachusetts offered us the best potential agreement, and that was basically for a collection and processing fee of for FY16 of $1,224,700. I should say to you that this bid has several components. One is the collection at curbside of recycling. There's one lump sum price that's bid on that, and that generally has an escalator built into it for each year for the 5-year period. That's based on the Boston Consumer Price Index, or 2%, whichever is greater. And it says, in addition to that, we have a fairly complicated formula for the processing of recycled materials. The recycling processing fee was bid at $75 per ton. However, what happens is that we take the average blended value of all the recycling, because now we're dealing with all recycling and not just paper. We take the average blended value of all recycling, and a market value is determined for that average blended value. We then subtract the market value, or compare the market value to the processing fee. Right now, the market value is $56 a ton for blended processing material. So that the formula says that under current market conditions, we have to pay $19 a ton to dispose of our recycling. Now, under a good market, say where we were held harmless, if the average blended value rose to $75 a ton, and then of course there is no processing fee. If the blended market value rises higher than $75 a ton, then the contract stipulates that we have a revenue share agreement with the vendor that amounts to 70%. So for every dollar it goes over $75, then we receive additional revenue back from the contractor of 70 cents. So that's a simplified version of the complexities of this contract. I think this contract here is the best deal that we can get. Unfortunately, it's higher than we had anticipated. It's significantly higher than what the final year of the last contract was, although many things have changed in the recycling world since we first bid the single stream contract 5 years ago. For the first 2.5 years, we were receiving revenue because of the high paper market, which then fell through the floor. And we've been paying a processing fee for the last 2.5 years of the contractor, so there's been significant changes. I will tell you that one of the reasons I chose Casella was that all of their materials that go to their processing facility, which in this case is in Charlestown, is remarketed as recycling. Whether or not there's a market, the material is disposed of as recycling. None of their materials end up at a waste-to-energy plant or a landfill. Other companies that shall remain nameless, at times, if there is no market for a particular product, they will stockpile it until they think there's going to be a market. If not, materials are disposed of through other means. That's not the case with this contract. All the material will be recycled at some point. The problem with the award and execution of this contract is that unfortunately we do not have enough money in the FY16 budget to cover it. So as part of the request, I am also asking you to approve a reserve fund transfer of $200,000 out of the reserve fund, and to transmit that request to the advisory committee to be taken up at their very next meeting. Coupled with the increase in the recycling contract, as you can imagine, we did have our annual increase in solid waste disposal costs that are on the order of 2 to 2.5%. All that money comes out of the same pot in the sanitation division budget. So I feel it's beneficial to award this contract to Casella. They are ready to start up and be running on July 1st, which is next week. With their trucks. They're ready to transition and take over from Waste Management immediately, pending the award of this contract, and to ask your permission to do a reserve fund transfer of $200,000.
Mr. Kleckner, you have something to add?
I'd like to address the request for transfer for fiscal year 16. I suppose we could wait into the next fiscal year and see how things go in other accounts and so on, but we're not comfortable doing that. On the other hand, we're not entirely comfortable going to the reserve fund so early in the year. So what we're considering doing is raising the possibility of reimbursing the reserve fund to the extent we can, whether it's an additional state aid, which may come our way when the state budget's eventually passed, or some other mechanism at the fall town meeting. So we are going to approach the advisory committee on the 7th, I believe, and offer that possibility. It's not a guarantee, but we think that would be a sign of good faith.
So we're going to have a new contractor. They're all set to roll next...
With your approval of this.
Right. Assuming we approve.
It's not I wouldn't say it's really subject legally to the reserve fund, but sooner or later we'd have to reconcile it, and this is the way we are proposing to approach that.
Right, but the contract will be starting before the advisory committee meets next.
That's not a problem. There's a sufficient amount of money in the budget.
So operationally, they know the routes, and we're going to see new trucks, different trucks, not necessarily new.
Well, yes, the answer is yes. The contractor will be ready to roll on July 1st. We've already implemented the transition. He's familiar with the routes. They're ready to go. As far as the trucks are concerned, because of the short notice from the time that we reached agreement to July 1st, there wasn't a lot of time, so we have allowed the contractor to go out and lease trucks for the first 6 weeks until his new order. He has ordered new trucks, and they will be delivered sometime mid-August.
Will they be doing the automated, the robot arms? And
Same thing.
Same thing.
Yes.
Okay. Selectman Daley.
Okay, yeah, I'm confused about the reserve fund transfer. Are you suggesting that we vote a reserve fund transfer out of the current reserve fund to help a contract?
Fiscal 16.
Next year's.
Okay, I'm not sure that legally we can vote for a reserve fund transfer when we are not yet in fiscal 16. So I would suggest we hold the vote on that part of it until
I think you're just really recommending approval or authorizing us to make a transfer request. It would be happening. You don't have the authority to make a transfer. You're just authorizing us to ask the advisory committee for that. Yeah. And they're going to do that on July 7th in next fiscal year.
Okay. But my second, I just want to make a comment. I'm delighted to hear, it's been sort of, I've felt very uneasy with the fact that we were all conscientiously recycling and then some of it was getting burned. And to hear that this material is all now going to be recycled, I'm delighted to hear that.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
How is this recycled material sorted? I heard a news report today about an issue arising with the people who do the sorting of this stuff. And I don't remember the group's name. It was advocating for increased wages for people who are actually doing this kind of work. And I'm just, is it automated, this kind of work, or is it's actually people who stand there and pick the things out?
The answer is yes to both. Part of it is automated and part of it is manual. I mean, the material recycling, the processing facilities in Charlestown, they're very large facilities and they're dealing with a lot of tonnage every day. So, the contractor accepts picks up our recycling and transports it directly. It never really stops anywhere else. in Brookline, so we don't take ownership of it at all. It's his, and he takes it to his facility. But, yeah, if you ever visited a MRF, they're called, they're very busy places. I can't speak to the health, safety, and wages issue. You know, that's really the contractor's problem. Mine was to try to get the best deal I could cut for the town of Brookline, and I think this contract does that.
So when you say that everything is going to be recycled, so the idea that paper, it doesn't bring much of value, doesn't matter, it's going to be recycled?
Doesn't matter, it still can be marketed.
Okay.
Yes. This is what the contractor has informed us, yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's good to know.
Okay, so seeing no more discussion, questions, I will move approval of the award and execution of contract number PW 16-1, curbside collection and processing of single-stream recycling in the amount of $1,224,700 to Casella Waste Management of Massachusetts. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
I'll further move that we approve the transmission to the advisory committee of the request of the Public Works Commissioner, Andrew Papasturgeon, for a FY16, this is next fiscal year, reserve fund transfer in the amount of $200,000. And I'll note, this is not part of the vote, that will occur on July 7th after the start of the new fiscal year. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask the commissioner, well, because I've had some interest expressed to me, when are you holding these public hearings on the
Pay-as-you-throw?
pay-as-you-throw?
You're doing it.
Well, this is going to be your public.
Oh, it's our public hearings?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'll ask the chairman, when are we holding these public hearings? Because I've had people
We will-
want to
yeah.
comment.
I would think we'll do it after the summer, September-ish. So more to come, and stay tuned. And when everyone's back from vacation, we can get back to the serious business of the town.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're moving on to serious business of the town. The question of approving the water and sewer rates for FY 2016. Mr. Russell.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thanks very much. For the record, Fred Russell, Water and Sewer Director for the town. We are here for water and sewer rate for FY 16. What I'd like to do, for the benefit of the two new board members, if I could, is to do a really quick history on our rate structure and how we actually got to it currently. So, basically, back in 2010, the board, the town created a task force to look at water and sewer rates. They also hired a consultant that strictly was hired to look at water and sewer rates, and primarily that's their function, is look at water and sewer rates and equity and that sort of thing. So what they did is they came up with a report in 2011 that had a rate structure that had three components to it. One was a base charge, one was a two-step block increasing block rate, and one was a fire service charge. So the base charge is a fixed charge that roughly what it's meant to do is to collect the actual costs associated with running the water and sewer system, collections, billing, and reading meters and that sort of thing. It takes out the volatility, if you will, for a portion of our revenue based on weather and certain conditions. So was the first component.
It covers the fixed costs.
Correct. Okay. So the second component was the increasing block rates, which DEP strongly recommends that cities and towns have increasing block rates, basically to promote conservancy, but also to offset some of the impact of the base rate to some of the lesser users in the town. And the third component was a fire service charge, which is really a readiness to serve as far as fire protection for some of the larger buildings and facilities in the town. So this is the current model we are at now. We have a computer model that allows us to plug in different scenarios, which is, again, how we got to where we are today. So, as far as the water division goes, the main purpose for this slide is to show that the MWRA assessment really takes up the bulk of our costs or expenses, both in water and in sewer. So primarily that drives our rate increases during each year. This is the MWRA's forecast that I received last year for their rates over the next 10 years. And you can see they aren't going down anytime soon. And I'd be very surprised if they actually do go down in FY '23 and '24. I'm assuming this will get adjusted accordingly at some point. Some of the main increases this year in expenses is our MWRA assessment, which is up almost $500,000. Our debt service, which is our investment in our infrastructure, is up about $250,000. Capital equipment is up, and salaries is up to the tune of just over $1 million. The other thing we're contending with is consumption. Our consumption has dropped roughly 20% over the last 7 or 8 years from where we were in 2007. Again, consumption goes down, revenues go down. So that's the balance we're working with.
And that, of course, is one of the reasons we went to the fixed rates.
Correct, exactly.
So the block rates cover pretty much the MWRA assessment, I presume? Pretty much. No.
Not quite. Okay. So what we are proposing this year is, this is the first year since this new model was introduced back in 2011, that we're actually going to increase the base rates. The base rates were, again, meant to cover expenses. In reading through the report, they wanted to try to keep that at around 15 to 20% of our overall expenses on the operations maintenance budget. This will put it right at 15%. So we're raising the base rates, and we're also adjusting the block rates accordingly as well. So what you're looking at is for the impact on a typical 120 HCF home, single-family residence, you're looking at approximately $97.60 per year, or $24.40 per quarter. When you look at the entire system, all the users, it's a net increase of 4.6% across the board. So with that, if there's any questions?
Yeah. I don't know if Ms. Goff told you that I was questioning that last set of numbers that you just showed. I mean, if you're talking about a 4.6% increase, then the average, the total bill for people must be over $9,000 to get, if their increase is 97.60, when that's 4.6%. And I don't think people's water and sewer bills are $9,000 a year, the average bill. Oh, I see somebody waving whose bill presumably is in that neighborhood. Is that true?
I'm not quite sure where you're getting your figures, but what I'm looking at is anytime...
Well, I'm saying, I'm taking the number, $97.60.
Okay.
And if that's 4.6% increase, then that means their total bill for the year must be over $9,000.
But the system average.
No, I get 2,400.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
$97 divided by 0.04 is 2,400, which sounds high to me.
That sounds about right.
Really?
Yeah.
Our average.
Again, but if I can clarify, Mr. Chairman.
$200 a month?
If I can clarify that number and the 4.6, when you're dealing with the dynamic of a 3 sort of tiered rate structure where you factor in base charge, where you factor in block rates, increasing block rates and fire service charges, you're going to, when I say 4.6%, that's essentially all of the revenue necessary to fully fund the enterprise account as compared to last year. It's a net result, or a net increase over all customers throughout the system. If you can pick and choose different scenarios, for instance, the 120 HCFs, it may be more than 4.6. It may be slightly higher than that. But when you pick different or individual models based on usage, it's going to vary from the 4.6. The 4.6 is the actual increase in revenue generated under this rate structure from last year in order to fully fund the enterprise account.
I have a question.
Sure. Selectman Heller.
You say that the water usage has declined. Do we have any explanation for that?
Flush toilets.
What's that?
Pardon me?
Efficient flush toilets.
Yeah, there are a lot, again, and efficiency fixtures in houses, again, promoting conservancy. It seems as though I picked 2007 because I wanted to show before we actually came up with a new rate structure, before it was just really a flat fee, there wasn't any sort of promotion for conservancy, where the step increased block rate really does promote conservancy.
I think, too, we've had an aggressive program of modernizing our infrastructure, so that's reducing the leaks in the system, plus the plumbing code has aggressive conservancy provisions, such as low-flow toilets and low-flow washing machines and shower heads, and et cetera, et cetera. So every time you get a new washing machine, your water usage should be going down a bit. Selectman Franco.
I might be getting out a little far over my skis here, but I remember another thing that came up last year was that some of the stormwater was getting into the sanitary sewer line, and we were paying the MWRA to treat that water. And through sewer separation, the Lower Beacon Street project, which I know all of us remember not so fondly, that had an impact on the water usage that we're being charged for.
Well, the assessment.
The assessment,
Correct.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. And actually, if you look at the system average, we are below the system average for an increase in water and sewer assessments for the MWRA. For instance, our assessment was roughly about 0.8% less than the system-wide average, and that equated to about $180,000 less than if we were assessed the system average. So that's, again, our investment in our infrastructure, which was one of the slides I was showing, was going up. There's payback for that as well.
I want to make a comment, and I'll let Mr. Russell respond to it if he sees fit. Last year, one of the issues that came up that I think stoked the fires on a little bit was an exploration of the impact that this rate system had on multifamily dwellings. There was some concern expressed, which piqued my interest, that we were disadvantaging multifamily dwellings at the expense of single-family homeowners. In brief, if you live in a multifamily dwelling with one water meter, you go into Block 2 essentially on day 1 or 2. And I know that there have been ongoing conversations between Mr. Russell and some other interested parties, and I look forward to those discussions continuing and maybe working out a solution to address my concerns and some of the concerns of other multifamily dwelling residents in town.
Could I?
If I may? Sure.
Make another comment? Oh, did you want to follow up?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, if it's along the same lines, or the benefit that the multifamily dwellings receive is they're basically sharing in the base charge that's assessed. Whereas single-family homes are getting that base charge by themselves, multifamily homes are basically dividing that. I actually did take the liberty of oops, I'm sorry, running a couple of different scenarios. And this slide, if I could just touch on, was, sorry, I need a mouse. So what I did is I did a rough calculation, and I took a 4-unit building on Brown Street, I took 423 Washington Street, and I know, you must know who lives there, and also on Park Street. And what I did is I essentially assigned the lower block rate of 7 HCF to every unit. So for the first one, for 4 units, I billed basically 28 HCFs at the lower block rate. Consequently, with the 6 units, 35, and 70 with the 10 units. And the bottom line is, when you look at, I took their most recent bill. Brown Street had a bill of $570. When you impose that and you actually assess the base charge to each unit, similar to a single-family dwelling, it's actually a slight increase in the bills. So the benefit that the multiple family housing is getting is, again, sharing and dividing that base charge.
Interesting.
I was going to point out that the people who have fewer members of their household are actually bearing a greater portion of the base rate, because, you know, we pay the same whether you have one person in the household or 6 or 8 people in the household.
Right, and that's
in
why
terms of the base.
Right, and that's the reason for setting that first tier so low, is to offset that.
Right, and we also, the system also recognizes that a significant portion of the costs are fixed and exist no matter how many people are in the household. So there's some, it's a balancing act.
Correct. It is.
Any other questions, comments? Therefore, I'll move approval of the FY 2016 water and sewer rates as in the memo that is in our packet. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have 2 public hearings on alcohol violations. So the first one is a public hearing on whether or not the All Kinds alcohol beverage license as a common victualler held by Ala Vista, Inc., doing business as Vernissage Restaurant Brofman Catering at 1627 Beacon Street should be modified, suspended, revoked, canceled, or not renewed for the 2016 annual licensing period. This is a public hearing pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 64, to determine whether the Board of Selectmen, as the licensing authority for the town of Brookline, should modify, suspend, revoke, cancel, decline to renew, or set conditions precedent to the renewal of the All Kinds liquor license issued to Ala Vista, Inc., DBA Vernissage Restaurant Brofman Catering, based on a charge that it has maintained an inactive liquor license in violation of Section A-A.11 of the Town of Brookline's Sale of Alcoholic Beverages Regulations. The notice of this violation, hearing dated May 22nd, 2015, was delivered by hand and by email to, and excuse my pronunciation, Alexandris Viscochinas, owner-manager. It is an exhibit to this hearing and is incorporated by reference into the minutes of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded by the recording secretary. First, who's here to present the case in support of the charge? Ms. Correa?
Patricia Correa, Town Council's Office, Brookline.
And who's here to represent the licensee, Mr. Barnowski?
Good evening. Adam Barnowski, Law Office of Robert Allen, on behalf of Ala Vista, and I just call him Alex. I just call him Alex V for short.
Thank you. Mr. Barnowski, are you satisfied with notice of the hearing?
Yes.
And are there any exhibits to be marked at this time?
No, there's not. Or not on my end.
Not on my end either.
Okay. We will take evidence and hear from the parties in 2 phases. The first being whether or not there was a violation, and the second being the appropriate action of the board. Ms. Correa, are you prepared to present the case in support of the charge?
Thank you, Chairman Wyszynski. Yes, this is an inactive license allegation. The town's regulations and state law prohibit maintenance of an inactive license, and it's a relevant violation in this town because we do have so few free licenses, and so we do conduct these hearings when we learn of an inactive license in order to press for either transfer or reactivation of the license. In this case, the evidence that's attached to the notice of hearing is a Brookline Tab article with a quote by the owner saying that they closed some time ago, and I believe that's conceded by the licensee. Perhaps Mr. Bernowski can confirm.
Yes, that is confirmed that they are closed. There was a discrepancy between when they closed and what was quoted in the tab. I believe the tab said that they'd been closed for a year, and that was published in mid-May. Their last day of operation was New Year's Eve of 2014.
Okay. Mr. Bernowski, are there any witnesses you'd like to call or evidence you'd like to present or any other statements you'd like to make with regard to liability for the charge?
There's no contesting that it's an inactive license at this point. They have been closed for approximately 6 months. I can let you know that we've been working with a proposed tenant who just as of last Friday had signed an LOI with the landlord there. They are the operators of La Voix restaurant on Newberry Street. They're interested in coming to Washington Square. I anticipate that we'll have a lease signed by July 1st and that we would have a transfer application to the board by the end of July. So we are seeking some matter of time to allow that transfer to take place.
Okay, thank you. Do the members of the board have any questions for either side? Seems pretty straightforward. We'll now decide whether or not the licensee is responsible for the violation for which it's charged, and then we'll turn to the question of what, if any, action the board should take in the event it finds a violation. I make a motion for a finding that the licensee is responsible for the violation described in the hearing notice May 22nd, dated May 22nd, 2015. All those in favor of a finding of responsible with regard to the charge of maintaining an inactive license in violation of Section A11 of the Town of Brookline Sale of Alcoholic Beverages Regulations, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. Chair votes aye. We'll continue with the determination of the appropriate action by the board. Ms. Correa, do you have any recommendations for us?
Thank you. Yes, I do. So under ABCC decisions, the ABCC likes to see licensing authorities give licensees some time to get their affairs in order, typically 6 months. And since we're now in June, 6 months is about the time of renewal of licenses in December. Therefore, I propose that the board vote for non-renewal of the license for 2016 in the event that by November 25th, 2015, that's shortly before the renewal votes the board will take, if the licensee has not activated the license or obtained Board of Selectmen approval for a transfer application, that the licensee shall submit to the board that there be non-renewal.
Selectman Daley?
I'm just going to say 6 months seems like a long time when they've been inactive already for 6 months.
I agree. I suggest that in an excess of caution, just given ABCC decisions.
Well, I'd be happier to make it a smaller number of months.
Could I ask a question about those decisions? Are they, is the organization worried about the length of time? I mean, it's already been inactive 6 months.
Yes, so I think what the ABCC decisions seem to reflect that there be some time after a board action. The board needs to give them some time. So they've been sort of operating under the radar screen with an inactive license for some time, but now they're before the board for the first time on this. And so if the board were to revoke the license, with what the ABCC said is not enough time following appearance before the board, the ABCC could reverse the licensing authority. So since we're now heading into renewal season anyway, we're about 6 months, it sort of would work very cleanly for the board to vote tonight to say that if it doesn't approve a transfer application by November 25th, then there will be non-renewal of the license. So then the licensee would have to work backwards from that, get their transfer application in, perhaps, the latest September perhaps, in time for the Selectmen's office to get the code enforcement department reports, for there to be fingerprint-based background checks on the transferee, because that is required now under town laws. And then the board could vote the transfer by November 25th on a Tuesday night hearing before then, so that there would be a decision before renewals come up.
I think the licensee's representative suggested that they would be coming to the board by the end of July. Is that not correct?
Let me just give Mr. Barnowski an opportunity to respond in general to what you heard from Ms. Correa, and then respond to Selectman Heller's question.
Thank you. So I think that the November 25th date would be fair. Practically speaking, I do anticipate having a application before the Board of Selectmen's office, at least, hopefully by the end of July. But because of the timing constraints, I do anticipate that if we're able to get it by the end of July, that we probably wouldn't be on for until a September hearing, because you need at least 30 days. And then practically speaking, what we're going to try to do is really have ABCC approval before November 25th, because my concern is that we get an application before the board and then it's somewhere in process while this renewal is going through. It doesn't get renewed, and then that somehow ties up the approval process. So we're going to try to work to get it before the board as soon as possible, although I do like having that date, just because of different kinds of mechanisms that can go along with it that can delay the process. Once it goes before the board, we don't normally hear back from the ABCC, generally between 6 and 8 weeks for final approval.
I'm going to say, I feel like because somebody's been flouting our regulations for a while, saying they deserve extra time seems counterintuitive to me. I think 4 months would be plenty under the scenario Mr. Barnowski just said. I said 3 months originally, but the 4 months gives them time to do what they need to do. And we could extend that if they have a good story at that point. But I feel like we're kind of encouraging people to flout our regulations if we say, oh, we haven't acted for a while, so now they get tons more time. I feel it's not a good message to send.
So you would, in the proposed motion, the way it's worded, that the board not renew the license for 2016 in the event that by November 26th, the licensee has not activated the license or obtained board approval for a transfer.
I would change that to, we would, what is it called when we revoke the license?
Yes, that would be it. But I just want to add one piece of information, which is not entirely current. I don't have the current data now, and I think probably the Selectmen's office, Brenda Costello, would probably know it. But right now we require fingerprint-based criminal background checks of the transferees. And the last I heard, that was a process that took the state police 5 to 6 weeks. It was not a quick process.
So 5 to 6 weeks, then we've got 4 to 8 weeks on the ABCC. But they can be concurrent.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying let's say that we will have a revocation hearing in 4 months if they have not come forward with another application or a transfer of application. So they would get another opportunity to tell us why we should give them the extra 2 months at that point.
So that would put it somewhere in October.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's only 30 days different than what's on here.
So let me ask the question about the ABCC sort of preferred 6 months time period. Is that a generalized across all types of cases that go before the ABCC? They like to see 6 months, or is that specific to these types of cases where there's an inactive license?
Inactive license, yeah.
Well, and I mean, my thought is just that, you know, we have people eager to get these licenses, and the longer you let somebody just sit on it, nobody else is able to use that license.
Ms. Correa, what does the ABCC say about the situation where a licensee allows the time lapse to be 6 months before we catch up with them and hold our hearing? I mean, do they talk about that issue?
I'm not aware of that many decisions from the ABCC on this, but they have generally said 6 months from hearing, and I will tell you that I recently spoke with the executive director with a question related to this, and he said, 6 months. So I'll just repeat that. That seems to be there. And when you revoke, unlike a suspension, which can't be overturned by the ABCC, a revocation can be overturned by the ABCC.
Selectman Franco?
So I'm going to speak in favor of Attorney Correa's recommendation.
I was going to also.
Well, good, then you can carry the water on this. I think that under the schedule that's been articulated by Selectman Daley, we're talking about a 1 month difference here, and I trust that the current license holder will act quickly upon the potential transfer that's going to take place. And it sounds like there's a lot of moving parts here that can take varying amounts of time. And I'd hate to come back in 4 months, 5 months, and not really have a full case laid out. Have to sort of continue this because every effort has been made, but
Okay, well, if we're going to that schedule, then I assume we don't listen to any excuses or, further explanations at that point. We just automatically revoke.
That's the way
You
it
have the
works,
authority to
right?
do that.
Yeah, that's what this vote is.
That's what the vote
that
Okay.
accomplished.
If certain actions don't happen, it's automatic.
It's automatic.
So we don't hear this again.
So I'm right there with you. I have carved out a record for myself on this board of being very tight on alcohol licenses, so I have no problem going to a revocation should appropriate actions not be taken by November.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiments you're expressing, but given that there's only a 1 month difference, and then we would have to hear it again.
Okay.
And clearly.
I think this is a lesson to us, though, to act more quickly when we see that something has closed.
If you see something closed, let us know.
Okay.
Okay, so any other discussion, comments? Therefore, I'll move that the board not renew the license for 2016 in the event that by November 25th, 2015, the licensee has not activated the license or obtained Board of Selectmen approval for an application that the licensee shall submit to the board for transfer of the license to a new Brookline location or to a new licensee at the same Brookline location. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye. Moving along to the next hearing. And this is a public hearing pursuant to Mass General Laws Section, Chapter 138, Section 64, to determine whether the Board of Selectmen as licensing authority for the town of Brookline shall modify, suspend, revoke, cancel, decline to renew, or set conditions precedent to the renewal of the All Kinds liquor license issued to Northeast Package Store LLC DBA GPS Wine and Spirits based on a charge that is maintained an inactive liquor license in violation of Section A11 of the Town of Brookline Sale of Alcoholic Beverage Regulations. The notice of this violation hearing dated June 4th was delivered by mail and by email to Mr. Nicholas Young, owner-manager. It's an exhibit to this hearing and is incorporated by reference into the minutes of the hearing. The hearing is being recorded by the recording secretary. So first, who's here to present the case in support of the charge? Ms. Correa?
Patricia Correa, Town Council's Office.
And who's here to represent the licensee? Please.
Good evening, John P. Cornell, and I'm here with the licensee, Nick Young.
Cornell. Okay, thank you, Mr. Cornell.
Cornell.
Connell. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Connell. Sorry.
I'm used to it.
Mr. Connell, you satisfied with the notice of the hearing?
I am.
Okay. Are there any exhibits to be marked at this time?
Yes. I'd like to show this is a listing. If I may approach.
Of course.
What I've submitted to the board is a listing agreement that my client has listed his liquor store for sale back in October of 2014. He's been actively trying to sell this establishment since October. This liquor store, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but has been decimated by the Wegmans competition, and what was up to that point a relatively successful liquor store is fallen on hard times, so to speak. Mr. Young closed the establishment 3 weeks ago, and we can see that he's ceased using the license in violation of Section 77, Chapter 138. We are here tonight to request a period of time, much like your previous case, to transfer the license. As you can see, we're trying to actively sell the license. The business and the license has a value, and it represents a significant amount of investment by Mr. Young, and he would like to try and recoup something, although his business plans have gone awry due to this competition. So, in recognition of the ABCC decision in re Strigar, a copy of which I have here, the ABCC generally allows the licensee 6 months from the date of the hearing or the date of the notice. I believe it's the date of the notice, so it's June 4 would be the date of the notice, which brings us out to December 4. I understand that in November you have renewal issues, but what my client would request is probably the following, that he be able to report back in mid-November to advise this board where he is in the potential transfer of the license. At that point, he may have a perfectly great purchase and sale agreement. He may have an applicant who's doing fingerprints. He may be 3/4 of the way down the field, but if it causes an extra couple of weeks, at that point, we would request the extra couple of weeks to complete the transaction.
Okay, let me just continue the script just to make sure we cover all our bases legally. So we'll take evidence and hear from the parties in 2 phases. First being whether or not there was a violation, the second being the appropriate action by the board. Ms. Correa, are you prepared to present the case in support of the charge?
Yes, I believe the case is that the licensee has conceded.
Right.
That there's an
okay.
inactive license.
And the licensee is not contesting that the business has.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's currently closed.
And are there any witnesses that you'd like to call?
None for the town.
I think we can just vote on the
Okay.
that part of it.
So we'll now decide whether or not the licensee is responsible for the violation with which it's charged. And then we'll turn to the question, what, if any, action the board should take in the event it finds a violation. So I'll make a motion that for a finding that the licensee is responsible for the violation described in the hearing notice dated June 4th. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. Chair votes aye. So now we'll turn to the determination of the appropriate action. Ms. Correa, do you have a recommendation for us?
Well, the recommendation is, as with the prior case, based on the same considerations, that the town, I'm sorry, that the board obviate the need for further appearance by voting now to not renew the license for 2016 in the event that the board has not approved a transfer application by November 25th. The board has the discretion to also consider the petition of the licensee to simply reappear in November in lieu of that.
I would say since he just closed, it's a little different situation than the last one, and I would give him till the December 4th that he's asking for. But then it would automatically come back.
I think what he was asking for was to reappear in mid-November. The board will be voting renewals in December.
Well, I'm happy to have him appear in November, but I think that we should not have to hold this whole hearing again if he wants to update us in November, that's okay, but I think we should have the December 4th date as the automatic cutoff.
November 25th?
December 4th,
December
6 months from
sorry.
the
He was
hearing notice.
saying December 4th was 6 months from the hearing notice date.
Is there some magic to?
There's no magic. I would say if you're off by a week or 10 days, I don't think the ABC is going to reverse you on that. And the reason why I suggested November 25th is because it could be that the board will be taking up renewals the next week. And so it might be cleaner to have a date before then, so you know what's going to happen to that license before you actually vote.
So if we vote it like this, and then the applicant, the licensee, wants, things are in the works, and the licensee requests a
reconsideration.
would like a reconsideration to get that extra month, so the transfer could take place, we could do that?
Yes, the licensee can request reconsideration and ask to be before the board before the effective date of November 25th, or whatever date the board decides. As far as the penalty goes, I think the board tonight has voted to find responsibility for the violation.
Right. So, Mr. Connell?
If I may, I just, because there's an overlap of about a week there, and the ABCC is pretty clear on it, 6 months, and there's a lot of, I would say, judicial wisdom in the decision that they arrived at. It's, for a reason. People invest in these licenses. They shouldn't necessarily be taken away for non-use. We understand that non-use is a violation, and people who have a pocket license should not enjoy that, especially with the great demand of licenses. But I would say to make a drop-dead date, the date of renewal, which is in advance of the 6-month period, would potentially lead to the result of, if you revoke it on November 25th, then you may have an appeal for that, which would tie the license up for another year. So my request would be, in a conciliatory manner, is to report back here mid-November. If there's nothing going on, or if we don't have a purchaser, if we're not pretty far down the field as far as getting our paperwork in and everything like that, then you may want to revoke on the 25th, and I would understand that. But if we have somebody, my experience, especially in Boston, is if there's somebody ready to go, it's just a matter of another week, we need to get this in, that boards will generally grant you that week to preserve the value of the license. So I would just request a hearing date in mid-November to report back, rather than a drop-dead date that if it isn't completely finished by November 25th, that'll be revoked.
Selectman Franco.
I'm wondering if Attorney Correa has any information about past violations at this establishment. I seem to recall that there was a package store on Route 9 that was found liable for several violations by an ABCC sting operation. So can you report on that?
Yes, that's correct. yes, I'd say within the last year or two, there have been several sting violations.
I represented this establishment. They had quite a few minor violations in one night. I believe that was the only event, though. Yeah, there was one night, there were quite a few, I think 8 or 9 minors that were cited, and there was a significant suspension, which we either served or paid a fine in lieu of the suspension. To be honest with you, that really didn't have the impact of devastating the business as the competition did. But be that as it may, we are actively trying to sell the license, and we would just like to have the time that's usually allocated to these licensees, which is 6 months.
Can I ask a question?
May I add that, that there are no free all alcohol package store licenses? That might be information from the board.
And I actually recall that I don't believe that this license was purchased from somebody else. I believe it's one we granted.
Yeah. To be clear, you can't purchase a license in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Right.
It's this board's decision as to whether a license is transferred or granted to anybody.
But I think this was a free, what I'm saying is, I think it was a free one that we gave the applicant.
It was an unused one.
It was an unused one.
I wasn't here for that, but my client says that he purchased it, and he thinks it was in the neighborhood of 100, 200,000.
So he purchased a business.
That's the fee, though.
Yeah, he purchased a business, and this board transferred the license. You
Yeah.
can't purchase a license in the state.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Given that Wegmans apparently has destroyed your business, according to you, what chance is there that another business like yours will come in and want to operate a liquor store next to Wegmans?
I can answer that question. The issue is, in pure economic terms, the price of the lease. We have a current lease that, when he entered the lease, was a great lease for that market, and now a landlord renting out that business would obviously have to decrease the amount of the rent. And we think in this market, there's always room for a new player, for a mom and pop shop, and I think the landlord would be amenable to a new liquor store that isn't, a box store, but would entertain, a less rent. So we do think there's an opportunity. We wouldn't go to the trouble of all this if we didn't think we could sell it.
Would it be terrible if we don't do it on the 1st of December? So from practical. I'm just looking at the calendar.
We often don't do the license renewals until later in December.
Right, so by putting it off to the 4th, the next date that would be available for us to act on licenses would be the 8th of December. Typically, we would do it either the 15th, well, probably the 15th. So this would give, even if we were to accede to the licensee's request, I think we're still okay.
And you certainly could put that particular renewal application over for a week or two.
So.
Yeah, I think we ought to give them until the 4th, December 4th, but that would be the date where it would automatically be revoked. And if he wants to come before this board in November and ask to be on the agenda because he has something going on, he can do so, but I think we should.
Right, and that doesn't have to be part of the motion. You just know.
No, it doesn't have to be part of the motion.
Okay. Any other?
If I may, I do think that removes the appealability issue for everybody. In other words, if you wait till December 4th, there's no grounds to appeal that you.
Right,
less than 6 months.
Yeah. So I'm going to move December 4th, and if anyone disagrees, you can amend the motion. So my motion is going to be that the board not renew the license for 2016 in the event that by December 4th, 2015, the licensee has not activated the license or obtained Board of Selectmen approval for an application, that the licensee shall submit to the board for transfer of the license to new Brookline location or to new licensee at the same Brookline location. Are there any motions to amend?
I would have a motion to amend, unless there's good.
Sorry, but you're not a member of this board.
But just like, unless there was good cause shown that, you know, in 2 days, we'll have everything, we have.
No, I think we're giving you till December 4th. I think that,
Oh, I'm sorry. This is a public hearing, and I didn't ask for anyone from the public. So would anyone from the public care to speak on this? Ms. Frawley, I apologize.
I apologize for being startled loudly a bit ago. I was listening so intently, I didn't expect to be interrupted.
And I didn't ask that question on the prior. I feel terrible.
Is this the liquor store that's pretty much across the street from Star Market on Route 9?
I believe it is, yes.
I'm not going to have perfect recall, but let me give you some memory about this, because I do remember some about this. This was actually a license that was transferred. And the contract, which I may still have buried somewhere, he paid a great deal of money for the transfer. And it used to be a liquor store that was in business for exactly 3 years, as I recall, on Harvard Street in Coolidge Corner. Is that ringing a bell? Yes. And that particular vendor, who had originally had their liquor store out in Waltham, decided they no longer wished to have the second store in Brookline. And this young man, I believe it's the same young man, he still looks young, good for him. He worked for the owner for about a year, and that was the bone of contention, the apple of discord, if you will, as to whether or not he would be qualified to not only be able to run the store, but that it would be transferred all the way from Harvard Street and actually be applicable over on Route 9. So that's a little bit of background. There were other complaints, which I didn't hear mentioned here. He was selling nips, I guess, and that was not supposed to be allowed. So there were different town meeting members who were complaining about this and came to this board and did complain about it. So I just wanted to bring you up to snuff. It's not as simple as I'm listening to. Thank you.
Right.
And I'm Regina Frawley from Precinct 16. Thank you.
Right, and should the license be transferred, the new prospective licensee would have to appear and have a public hearing, and town meeting members and abutters and neighbors and whomever would have an opportunity to express their views. So,
Do you want to repeat the vote?
I guess I will. So I'll move that the board not renew the license for 2016 in the event that by December 4th, 2015, the licensee has not activated the license or obtained Board of Selectmen approval for an application that the licensee shall submit to the board for transfer of the license to a new Brookline location or to a new licensee at the same Brookline location. That's a mouthful. All those in favor, Selectman Daley.
aye.
Selectman Franco.
Aye.
Selectman Heller.
Aye.
Selectman Green.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And that concludes our hearing. Thank you. And I believe item 13, which is the annual appointments, is being postponed. So I believe that concludes our business for the evening.
Good.